I'm Nora Wilson, and I've learned that destiny has a twisted sense of humor. There I was, stranded on Highway 35 outside San Antonio, my prized Camaro SS, steaming like a damn tea kettle in the brutal Texas heat. The engine had given up spectacularly during what should have been a routine drive back from the track. The asphalt shimmered like liquid mercury, and sweat dripped down my back as I stared at the busted radiator hose. Not a soul in sight for miles. Just endless scrubland and vultures circling overhead like they knew something I didn't. That's when the black sedan pulled over. She stepped out like she was walking a red carpet instead of cracked pavement, auburn hair catching the afternoon sun. Her crisp white blouse somehow remained pristine despite the oppressive heat, and when those warm brown eyes met mine, something shifted in my chest. Car trouble? Just a small nuclear meltdown. I wiped grease off my hands with a rag that had seen better decades. Nothing I can't handle. She smiled, the kind that suggested she saw right through my bravado. I'm Catherine, and you look like you could use another pair of hands. Most people in expensive sedans don't stop for broke-down race cars. Most people don't roll up their sleeves and dive into automotive surgery with a stranger. But Catherine Roberts wasn't most people. She handed me tools before I asked for them, held the flashlight steady as I worked, and never once complained about the heat or the dirt. When our fingers brushed reaching for the same wrench, that little shock of contact lingered longer than it should have. You know your way around an engine, I said, genuinely impressed. My father owned a garage. Before the film business consumed my life. Film business? Documentary producer. I tell other people's stories for a living. The radiator hose finally surrendered to our combined assault. As the engine fired back to life, I realized I didn't want this roadside encounter to end. Listen, Catherine. I leaned against my car, suddenly nervous in a way that racing at 180 miles per hour never made me. There's a great diner about 10 miles up the road. Best coffee in 3 counties, terrible pie that somehow tastes amazing at sunset. She tilted her head, studying me with those intelligent brown eyes. Are you asking me to coffee, Nora Wilson? Hearing my name in her voice sent heat racing through my veins that had nothing to do with the Texas sun. I'm asking if you'd like to continue this conversation somewhere with air conditioning. Her laugh was rich and genuine. Lead the way, race car driver. As I pulled back onto the highway, Catherine's sedan following in my rearview mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter had just changed everything. The vultures were still circling, but suddenly they seemed less ominous and more like witnesses to something beginning. The roadside diner lived up to its name in the worst possible way. Cracked vinyl booths, flickering neon signs, and coffee that could strip paint. But sitting across from Catherine Roberts, I wouldn't have traded this moment for the finest restaurant in San Antonio. So you really make a living driving in circles at dangerous speeds? Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, not judgment. That's like saying you point cameras at people and call it art. I stirred sugar into my coffee, watching her laugh. It's about precision, timing, reading the track like a book. And the adrenaline rush? That's just a bonus. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. What's the real reason you race? Most people asked about sponsors or prize money. Catherine cut straight to something deeper, and it caught me off guard. Freedom, I guess. When I'm behind that wheel, nothing else exists. No expectations, no disappointments. Just me, the machine, and the next turn. That's beautiful. What about you? Why documentaries? Her fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup. Everyone has a story worth telling. Most people just never get the chance to tell it. What's your story, Catherine Roberts? Something flickered across her face, too quick to read. Still being written. The conversation flowed like we'd known each other for years instead of hours. She told me about her latest project on urban renewal, the politics of film funding, the loneliness of always being behind the camera. I found myself sharing dreams I'd never spoken aloud about championship racing, about proving women belonged in a sport that still treated us like curiosities. You don't talk like other race car drivers I've met, she said. You've met others? Research for an abandoned project. They were all ego and testosterone. Sorry to disappoint you with my lack of machismo. Her smile turned wicked. I'm not disappointed at all. The sun was setting through the grimy windows, casting everything in golden light. Catherine's auburn hair caught the glow, and I found myself memorizing the curve of her jaw, the way she gestured when she talked. I should probably head home, she said eventually, but made no move to leave. Probably. Long drive back to the city. Very long. The silence stretched between us, charged with possibility. I reached across the table, covering her hand with mine. Catherine. Yes? I'd really like to see you again. Her fingers turned beneath mine, palm against palm. I'd like that too. We stood outside the diner as stars appeared in the darkening sky. Her sedan sat next to my Camaro like they were having their own conversation. This is crazy, she whispered. I don't usually. Neither do I. But when she stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, mixing with the scent of motor oil still clinging to my clothes, it didn't feel crazy at all. It felt inevitable. Nora? Yeah? For the record, I'm very glad your car broke down today. Before I could respond, she rose on her toes and kissed me. Soft, tentative, perfect. When we broke apart, her cheeks were flushed and my heart was racing faster than any engine I'd ever pushed to its limit. Call me, she said, pressing a business card into my hand. I watched her taillights disappear into the Texas night, already knowing I wouldn't wait until tomorrow to use that number. Some races you win by being patient, others, you win by going full throttle from the starting line. This felt like a full throttle kind of situation. I called Catherine the next morning before my second cup of coffee, which for me was practically a world record in restraint. She answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. There's a race this weekend at San Antonio Speedway. Feel like watching someone drive in circles at dangerous speeds? Will there be crashes? Only if I'm having a really good day. Her laugh made me grin like an idiot. Pick me up at 7. Saturday arrived with the kind of perfect weather that made Texas tolerable. Catherine waited on her apartment steps wearing jeans that should have been illegal and a vintage racing t-shirt that told me she'd done her homework. MC Queen or Newman fan? I asked, nodding at the shirt. Both. But I'm hoping to add Wilson to that list. The speedway buzzed with pre-race energy. Mechanics crawled over cars like surgical teams, drivers paced in their fire suits, and the smell of racing fuel mixed with barbecue from the concession stands. I watched Catherine take it all in, her producer's eye cataloging every detail. This is incredible, she breathed. The raw energy, the precision chaos. Stick around until the green flag drops. Then you'll really see something. I introduced her to my crew chief, Tommy, who looked Catherine up and down with obvious approval. About time someone with taste showed up, he said, earning an elbow to the ribs. Behave, or I'll let Martinez tune the engine. Catherine charmed everyone she met, asking intelligent questions about tire compounds and aerodynamics. Watching her work a room reminded me she was successful for reasons beyond just being beautiful. The call for drivers came too soon. I suited up, helmet tucked under my arm, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach that had nothing to do with pre-race nerves. Any advice for a first-time spectator? Catherine asked. Find Tommy in the pit area. He'll explain what's happening and keep you from getting run over by the crew. What about lucky charms? Kisses for luck? The question hung between us, playful but charged. Other drivers were walking past, my crew was watching, but suddenly none of that mattered. I stepped closer, close enough to see the golden flecks in her brown eyes. I could use all the luck I can get. She rose on her toes, hands resting on my shoulders, and kissed me like she meant it. Soft lips, the taste of coffee and possibility. When we separated, Tommy was grinning like he'd won the lottery. Hell, if that's your good luck charm, you might actually win this thing. The race itself became a blur of controlled chaos. 24 cars fighting for position, engines screaming, tires protesting every turn. I found my rhythm early, working my way through the field with patience that would have impressed my old driving instructor. Every few laps, I caught glimpses of Catherine in the pit area, Tommy gesturing wildly as he explained strategy. She looked completely at home in the controlled madness, and seeing her there made something warm unfurl in my chest. With 5 laps remaining, I made my move. The leader had been running the high line all day, leaving the inside open. I dove low in turn 3, pulling alongside as we hit the backstretch. The checkered flag waved as I crossed the finish line half a car length ahead. Victory lane was chaos. Champagne sprayed everywhere, photographers flashed constantly, and the trophy felt heavier than expected. But through it all, I kept looking for auburn hair in the crowd. She found me as the official celebrations wound down, slipping through the barriers like she belonged there. Congratulations, race winner. Think I can keep you interested if I keep winning? I think you could keep me interested doing a lot of things. We ended up at a quiet restaurant downtown, still running on adrenaline and possibility. Catherine had changed into a dress that made my victory feel insignificant by comparison. Tell me about the first time you knew you wanted to race, she said over dinner. I was 16, sneaking into the local dirt track. Watched this woman driver absolutely destroy a field of guys who thought she didn't belong. Something clicked. And now you're her. Some days. The conversation meandered through racing stories, film projects, and shared dreams. Catherine had this way of listening that made you want to tell her everything, dangerous as that was. Walking back to my car, the San Antonio skyline glittering around us, she slipped her hand into mine. Today was perfect. Even the part where I nearly put the car in the wall on lap 15, especially that part. Shows you're human. We stopped beside her apartment building, neither wanting the evening to end. The night air carried the scent of jasmine and distant barbecue, and Catherine looked beautiful enough to stop traffic. Nora? Yeah? I had an amazing time today. Me too. She stepped closer, and this time when she kissed me, there was nothing tentative about it. Heat and promise and the taste of wine on her lips. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I should go up. You should. But she lingered, fingers still tangled with mine. And I knew this was just the beginning of something that would change everything. 3 weeks after that first kiss outside her apartment, Catherine called with an unexpected proposition. I was tinkering with my car's transmission when my phone buzzed. How would you feel about becoming a movie star? She asked without preamble. Do I get to keep my clothes on? That's negotiable. The heat in her voice made my wrench slip. We'd been dancing around each other, dating in the spaces between my races and her production meetings. Every encounter left me wanting more. I'm serious, Nora. I've been commissioned to do a documentary on underground racing culture. The network wants authenticity. You could be my guide. And your subject? Among other things. That evening, she arrived at my garage with camera equipment and a determination that made my pulse quicken. She'd traded her usual professional attire for jeans and a fitted black tank top that showcased arms toned from years of handling equipment. Tell me about this world, she said, adjusting her camera settings. The real story behind the glamour. I found myself opening up under her lens, talking about the sacrifices, the politics, the constant battle to prove myself in a male-dominated sport. Catherine listened with those intelligent brown eyes, occasionally asking questions that cut straight to the heart of things. Why do you think people assume racing isn't for women? Same reason they assume filmmaking isn't. Fear of losing control. And how does it feel to take that control anyway? Addictive. The chemistry between us crackled even with the camera rolling. Every shared glance, every accidental touch while she adjusted equipment, built tension that seemed ready to ignite. Late-night editing sessions became our new normal. Catherine's home office was a creative chaos of monitors, hard drives, and coffee cups. I'd arrive after track practice to find her hunched over footage, completely absorbed in crafting the story. You're obsessed, I said one evening, placing fresh coffee beside her keyboard. Occupational hazard. Want to see what we've got so far? She pulled me into the chair beside her, close enough that I could smell her shampoo, feel the warmth radiating from her skin. The rough cut she showed me was extraordinary, raw interviews woven with race footage that captured something essential about the sport. This is incredible, Catherine. You see things other people miss. She turned in the chair. Suddenly we were inches apart. What do you see when you look at me? The question hung in the air, like a challenge. Her lips were slightly parted, eyes searching mine for an answer I wasn't sure I was ready to give. Someone who makes me forget about racing. That's never happened before. She closed the distance between us, kissing me with an urgency that had been building for weeks. Her hands tangled in my hair as I pulled her closer, the editing forgotten as we lost ourselves in the heat that had been simmering just beneath the surface. We moved from the office to her bedroom with stumbling steps and desperate kisses. The rest of the world faded away as we explored this new territory together, skin against skin in the soft glow of streetlights filtering through her curtains. Every touch was electric, every whispered word a promise. We fit together perfectly, two souls finding completion in the joining of bodies and hearts, movements synchronized like dancers who'd rehearsed this choreography in dreams. Afterward, we lay tangled in sheets that smelled like her perfume, Catherine's head on my shoulder as dawn crept through the windows. "The more time I spend with you, the more questions I have," she murmured against my collarbone. "Good questions or bad questions?" "Dangerous ones." I traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, marveling at how right this felt. "Such as? What happens when the documentary is finished? When you don't need to be here every night? Who says I need the documentary as an excuse?" She lifted her head to look at me, vulnerability flickering in those brown eyes. "I'm not good at this, Nora. Letting people in. The last time I did." "What happened?" "She left. Said I was too focused on work, not present enough." I cupped her face in my hands, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Your racing career could take you across the country. My work projects could send me anywhere. Then we figure it out, together." She smiled, but I caught the shadow of doubt that crossed her features. There were things Catherine wasn't telling me, secrets locked behind those intelligent eyes. But lying there in the morning light, her body warm against mine, I convinced myself that whatever shadows she carried couldn't touch what we were building. The documentary project gave us an excuse to spend every day together. I introduced her to other drivers, mechanics, team owners. She captured their stories with the same intensity she brought to everything else, always pushing deeper than surface narratives. "You're collecting something more than racing stories," I observed one evening as she interviewed Maria Santos, one of the few other women competing at the professional level. "Every story is about more than its surface subject," Catherine replied. "People reveal themselves in unexpected ways when they think they're talking about something else." Watching her work was like watching an artist create masterpieces. She had this gift for making people comfortable, drawing out truths they probably hadn't planned to share. But I was beginning to understand that Catherine Roberts was as much mystery as she was revelation. And mysteries, as any good racer knows, have a way of catching up with you when you least expect it. 2 months into filming, Catherine had practically moved into my world. Her camera became a familiar presence at the track. Her editing equipment colonized half my garage, and her coffee cup claimed permanent residence on my workbench. I thought I knew every corner of her life, every quirk and preference. I was spectacularly wrong. It started innocently enough. Catherine was running late for a morning shoot, having overslept after we'd spent most of the night celebrating my latest victory. She asked me to grab her backup camera from her home office while she showered. "It's in the filing cabinet, second drawer," she called over the sound of running water. "Under the B folders." The filing cabinet was meticulously organized, typical Catherine. But when I pulled open the drawer, my hand brushed against something unexpected wedged behind the folders. A small brass key, the kind used for storage units or safety deposit boxes. I almost put it back without thinking, but something about the way it was hidden nagged at me. Catherine didn't hide things. She was direct, sometimes brutally honest about everything from her coffee preferences to her opinion on my driving technique. "Find it?" she called from the bathroom. "Yeah, got it." But I pocketed the key. The guilt ate at me for 3 days. Every time Catherine smiled, every shared laugh over breakfast, every stolen kiss between interviews made the weight of that brass key heavier. I told myself it was probably nothing important. Maybe a storage unit for old equipment or tax documents. I told myself right up until I found myself standing outside Storewell Self-Storage at dawn, key in hand. Unit 247 was small, maybe 10 by 12 feet, but packed with organized precision that screamed Catherine's attention to detail. File boxes labeled with names I'd never heard, photograph albums arranged chronologically, and manila folders thick with documents that made my stomach drop. The Roberts family. Birth certificates, adoption papers, medical records spanning decades, school photos of children who weren't Catherine but shared her eyes, her smile. I recognized her handwriting on sticky notes attached to various documents, cross-references and question marks that painted the picture of an exhaustive search. One folder was thicker than the others, labeled simply Sarah. Inside were recent photographs, surveillance-style shots of a woman with Catherine's auburn hair walking children to school, grocery shopping, living a suburban life in Austin. The resemblance was unmistakable. My hands shook as I flipped through investigative reports, private detective summaries, and what looked like 20 years of collected information. Catherine had been searching for someone, systematically and secretly, for longer than we'd known each other. Damn, I whispered to the dusty air. More files revealed the scope of her investigation. Foster care records, adoption agency documents, court papers sealed and unsealed through what must have been expensive legal maneuvering. At the bottom of one box, I found a birth certificate with Catherine's name but different parents than she'd told me about. The pieces fell together with sickening clarity. Catherine Roberts, documentary filmmaker who specialized in finding untold stories, had been using her skills to hunt down her own past. Every project, every interview technique, every question about family during our late-night conversations had been practice or deflection. I photographed key documents with my phone, my conscience screaming protests even as my finger pressed the shutter button. This was a violation of trust that could destroy everything between us, but I was already too deep in the secret to surface cleanly. The drive back to Catherine's apartment felt like a death march. She was in the kitchen making coffee when I arrived, humming something under her breath, completely unaware that her carefully constructed privacy had just shattered. "There you are," she said, kissing my cheek. "Ready for the big interview with Rodriguez today?" Catherine. Something in my tone made her freeze, coffee mug halfway to her lips. "We need to talk." Her face went carefully blank, the professional mask I'd seen her wear with difficult interview subjects. "About what?" I placed the brass key on her kitchen counter. The small metallic clink seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. "About Sarah. About the storage unit full of files on a family you never mentioned. About why you've been lying to me for months." The coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the tile floor in a spray of ceramic and dark liquid. Catherine stared at the mess like it held answers to questions she'd hoped never to face. "How did you—" she started, then stopped, shoulders sagging in defeat. "The filing cabinet." "Who is she, Catherine?" For a long moment, the only sound was coffee dripping from the counter onto broken ceramic. When Catherine finally looked up, her brown eyes were bright with unshed tears. "My sister. My biological sister." The admission hung between us like a confession. I wanted to comfort her, to close the distance and hold her while she explained, but the betrayal was too fresh. She'd been carrying this secret through every intimate moment we'd shared. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because telling people makes it real. And if it's real, then finding her matters. And if finding her matters, then losing her again." She trailed off, but I understood. Catherine Roberts, who built her career on exposing truth, had been too afraid of her own story to share it with the person closest to her. "She lives in Austin," I said quietly. Catherine's head snapped up. "You went through the files. Some of them? Then you know I've been watching her for months. Like some kind of stalker. You know she has kids? 2. Emma's 8, Michael's 10. They look just like she did at that age." The pain in Catherine's voice was raw, unfiltered. This wasn't the composed filmmaker I'd fallen in love with, but someone stripped bare by years of searching and hoping. "Why haven't you contacted her?" "What do I say?" "Hi. I'm the sister you probably don't remember who's been secretly investigating your life for 20 years. Fair point. But looking at the woman I'd been sharing my bed and dreams with, realizing she'd been carrying this weight alone, I felt something shift between us. Not just the betrayal of the secret-keeping, but a deeper understanding of why Catherine never fully let anyone close. She'd been preparing for abandonment her entire adult life. Catherine cleaned up the shattered coffee mug with mechanical precision while I stood in her kitchen like an intruder in my own relationship. The silence stretched until it felt like a living thing, feeding off our mutual discomfort. "Say something," she finally whispered, not looking up from the ceramic shards. "I'm trying to figure out if you trust me at all." Her hands stilled on the dustpan. "Of course I trust you." "Really?" "Because keeping a 20-year investigation secret from someone you're sleeping with suggests otherwise." The words came out harsher than I intended, but the hurt was real. Every intimate conversation, every moment she'd deflected my questions about her family, every time she'd changed the subject, when I mentioned my own messy childhood, suddenly felt calculated. It wasn't about not trusting you, Nora. It was about protecting myself. From what? She stood, dumping the broken ceramic in the trash with more force than necessary. From having to explain why I'm 34 years old, and still obsessed with finding someone who might not even want to be found. Have you considered that maybe she does? Have you considered that maybe she's built a perfect life that doesn't include a reminder of the system that failed her? The pain in Catherine's voice was so raw it made my chest ache. I wanted to close the distance between us, but the storage unit revelation had changed something fundamental. We were standing in the same room, but on opposite sides of a chasm I wasn't sure could be bridged. "Catherine, look at me." She turned reluctantly, arms crossed defensively over her chest. "And I understand being scared, but keeping secrets destroys relationships faster than any other kind of damage." "Is that what we're doing? Destroying this?" The question hung in the air like a loaded gun. I could feel us teetering on the edge of something irreversible. "I don't know. Are you going to keep lying to me about important things?" "I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything." Same difference when it comes to trust. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "So what now? You want me to open every file, share every private thought, give you complete access to 20 years of pain just to prove I'm worthy of your presence in my bed?" "I want you to let me help. I want to be part of your life, not just the pleasant distraction you turn to when the real stuff gets too heavy." "You don't understand what you're asking." "Then explain it to me." Catherine walked to her living room window, staring out at the San Antonio skyline like it held answers. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I was 5 when they separated us. Sarah was 3. She cried for me for weeks, according to the social worker reports. I promised her I'd find her, bring her home." "Catherine, do you know what it's like to carry that promise for 30 years? To build your entire career around finding people's stories just so you'd have the skills to find the one person who mattered most?" I moved closer but didn't touch her yet. "Is that why you became a documentary filmmaker?" "Partly. Every interview technique, every research method, every contact in law enforcement or social services was insurance, building the tools I'd need to keep my promise to a 3-year-old who's now a grown woman with her own family." The pieces clicked together with devastating clarity. Catherine's relentless work ethic, her ability to get people to open up, her network of contacts across multiple states. She'd weaponized her professional success in service of a childhood promise. And now, you've found her. Now I've found her, and I'm terrified to make contact because what if she doesn't remember me? What if she doesn't care? What if her life is perfect without the complications I'd bring? I finally closed the distance, placing my hands on her shoulders. She was trembling slightly, all that controlled composure finally cracking. "What if she's been looking for you too?" Catherine turned in my arms, eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if she hasn't? Then you'll know. And knowing is always better than wondering." "Is it?" "Because right now I can still hope. Once I make contact, hope turns into reality, and reality might be rejection." I cupped her face in my hands, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "Catherine, you've been carrying this alone for so long. Let me help carry it with you." "I don't know how to do that. Letting people in, sharing the weight, it's not something I'm good at." I noticed. That earned me a weak smile. "I'm sorry I kept this from you. I'm sorry you had to find out by snooping through my secrets. I'm sorry I snooped. but I'm not sorry, I know now. She kissed me then, soft and desperate, tasting like apology and fear, and something that might have been relief. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. I have a private investigator. He thinks Sarah might be open to contact. There are signs she's been searching adoption registries too. What kind of signs? Recent activity on reunion websites, requests for her original birth records. Small things, but suggestive. So what's the next step? Catherine pulled back to look at me fully. We drive to Austin. We find out if 30 years of searching ends with a reunion or a closed door. We? I can't do this alone, Nora. I thought I could, but I can't. If you're serious about helping, I'm serious. It might get messy. Family reunions don't always go like the movies. I thought about my own complicated family history, the relationships that had shaped and scarred me. Messy doesn't scare me. Secrets do. No more secrets, she promised. Good. Because I have some too, and apparently we're in the full disclosure phase of this relationship. That got a genuine laugh. The first real smile I'd seen from her since placing the key on her counter. Road trip to Austin it is, I said. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning, before I lose my nerve. You won't lose your nerve, and if you do, I'll be there to remind you why this matters. She kissed me again, harder this time, with the desperation of someone finally allowing themselves to hope. In her arms, surrounded by the wreckage of broken ceramic and broken secrets, I realized we'd just crossed a line in our relationship. Not just into deeper intimacy, but into the kind of partnership where you face impossible things together. The next 24 hours would either give Catherine the family reunion she'd dreamed of for 3 decades, or break her heart completely. But she wouldn't face it alone. The drive to Austin should have taken 3 hours. We stretched it to 4, stopping for coffee we didn't need and gas we didn't require. Catherine's hands hadn't stopped shaking since we left San Antonio, and I was running out of distractions. Tell me about the investigator, I said as we passed the Kyle exit. Marcus Webb, former Austin PD, now specializes in family reunification cases. He says Sarah Patterson lives on Maple Ridge Drive with her husband David and their 2 kids. Patterson. She took his name. Or maybe it's her adoptive name. I don't know everything, despite 20 years of trying. The bitterness in Catherine's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. I reached across the console, threading our fingers together. We're going to figure this out, together. She squeezed my hand like a lifeline. What if she slams the door in our faces? Then we respect her choice and drive home. But what if she doesn't? The house on Maple Ridge Drive was exactly what I'd expected from the surveillance photos. Suburban perfection with a minivan in the driveway and children's bicycles scattered across the front yard. A tire swing hung from an oak tree that had probably been there longer than the neighborhood. Damn, Catherine whispered, staring through the windshield. She has the life I always dreamed she'd have. Are you ready? No. But I've been preparing for 30 years, so ready is relative. We sat in my car for 10 minutes, watching the house like it might reveal secrets if we stared long enough. Finally, a woman emerged from the front door with auburn hair that caught the afternoon sunlight like Catherine's. That's her, Catherine breathed. Sarah Patterson was taller than expected, but the resemblance was unmistakable. Same eyes, same way of tilting her head when she concentrated, same graceful movement that I'd learned to recognize in Catherine. She's beautiful, looks just like you. She looks like Mom. The mom we both lost. Sarah was watering flowers in the front garden, completely unaware that her sister was watching from across the street. The domestic tranquility felt almost sacred. I can't do this, Catherine said suddenly. Look at her. She's peaceful, happy. I have no right to disrupt that with my need for closure. Catherine, you're not disrupting anything. You're her sister. I'm a stranger who happens to share DNA. There's a difference. But even as she protested, Catherine was already opening the car door. Some forces are stronger than fear, and the pull of family is one of them. We approached the house like pilgrims approaching a shrine. Sarah looked up from her flowers as we reached the gate, polite curiosity on her face. Can I help you? Catherine froze beside me, all her practiced interview techniques abandoning her when she needed them most. I stepped slightly forward. Are you Sarah Patterson? Yes? My name is Nora, and this is Catherine Roberts. We're hoping you might have a few minutes to talk. Sarah's eyes moved between us, settling on Catherine with growing intensity. Something flickered across her face, recognition or confusion. I'm sorry, do we know each other? You look familiar. Catherine found her voice. Sarah, this might sound crazy, but I think you're my sister, my biological sister. The watering hose slipped from Sarah's hands, spraying water across the sidewalk. She stared at Catherine like she was seeing a ghost. Katie? The childhood nickname hung in the air between them. Catherine made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. You remember? I remember everything. The social worker who separated us, promising we'd see each other again. The way you braided my hair, how you sang me to sleep when I had nightmares. You were so little. I thought you'd forgotten. I've been looking for you for 15 years. The admission shattered the last wall between them. Catherine crossed the remaining distance in 2 steps, and suddenly they were holding each other in the middle of Sarah's front garden, 30 years of separation dissolving into desperate hugs and tears that had been waiting decades to fall. I stood back, witnessing a reunion I'd only seen in movies. The raw emotion was almost overwhelming. Joy and grief tangled together as 2 women reclaimed the sisterhood that had been stolen from them. I can't believe you're here, Sarah whispered against Catherine's shoulder. I registered with every adoption website, hired investigators, even went back to the old foster homes looking for clues. I know. Marcus Webb told me you'd been searching too. Sarah pulled back, holding Catherine at arm's length. You hired Webb? He's good, expensive, but good. Worth every penny if it brought me to you. Mom and Dad! 2 children burst from the front door like eager puppies. Who are these ladies? Sarah wiped her eyes, composing herself with the practiced ease of motherhood. Emma, Michael, I want you to meet someone very special. This is your Aunt Katie. Aunt Katie? The little girl looked skeptical. We don't have an Aunt Katie. We do now, Sarah said, her hand still gripping Catherine's like she might disappear. She's my sister from before you were born. Before we were born? Michael asked. Where was she? Looking for us, Sarah answered simply. Just like we were looking for her. The children accepted this explanation with the adaptability unique to kids. Within minutes they were dragging Catherine across the yard to see their tree fort while Sarah and I followed at a more sedate pace. Thank you, Sarah said quietly. For bringing her here. For being with her through this. She's been carrying this search for a long time. Too long. We both have. David Patterson emerged from the house eventually, a tall man with kind eyes and grease stains on his work shirt. Sarah made introductions with shining eyes and a smile that could have powered the neighborhood. Family dinner, David announced after minimal consultation. I'm grilling burgers, Sarah's making her famous potato salad, and you 2 aren't leaving until we hear 30 years worth of stories. The evening unfolded like a dream Catherine hadn't dared to hope for. Emma and Michael adopted their newfound aunt with enthusiasm, demanding stories about her job and showing off every toy, drawing, and accomplishment in their possession. Catherine transformed in their presence, becoming the sister and aunt she'd never had the chance to be. Watching her laugh at Michael's knock-knock jokes and help Emma with a puzzle, I saw a side of her that had been locked away since childhood. After the kids went to bed, we sat on the back patio with beers and the comfortable exhaustion that comes from emotional catharsis. Sarah pulled out photo albums spanning 15 years of marriage, 2 pregnancies, family vacations, and milestone moments. I wanted to share all of this with you, Sarah said, flipping through pictures. Every birthday, every Christmas, every achievement. I'd look at the empty chair at our table and wonder where you were. I was usually working, Catherine admitted, throwing myself into other people's stories because I couldn't face my own. Well, now you can be part of ours. The casual invitation carried the weight of acceptance, of family bonds reforged stronger than they'd ever been. Catherine's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. Later, lying together in the guest room Sarah insisted we stay in, Catherine traced patterns on my bare shoulder in the darkness. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For pushing me to make contact, for being here with me, for making this possible. You made this possible. I just drove the car. She kissed my collarbone, soft lips trailing across skin still warm from our earlier joining. The reunion had left us both emotionally raw and physically desperate for connection, leading to lovemaking that felt like celebration and claim all at once. I love you, Catherine said into the darkness. The words hung in the air like a gift I hadn't expected to receive. We'd been dancing around the feeling for months, but hearing it spoken aloud in Sarah's guest room, surrounded by the warmth of reclaimed family, made it feel official. I love you too. Even with all my secrets and complications, especially with them, they make you who you are. Who I am is someone who just got her sister back after 30 years. Someone who has a family again. Someone who has always had family. She just needed help finding it. Catherine fell asleep in my arms as Austin settled into quiet around us. Through the window, I could see Emma's bicycle in the backyard, forgotten in the excitement of meeting Aunt Katie. Tomorrow would bring logistics and planning, discussions about holidays and visits, the practical arrangements of rebuilding family bonds. But tonight, Catherine Roberts finally had the reunion she'd spent her adult life working toward, and against all odds, it was even better than she'd dared to hope. 6 months later, I stood at the starting line of the Texas State Championship with Sarah and her family cheering from the grandstands. Catherine had positioned herself in the pit area with her camera, documenting what we both hoped would be my biggest victory yet. The documentary about underground racing culture had evolved into something neither of us expected. What started as a simple exploration of motorsports had become an intimate portrait of passion, dedication, and the families that form around shared dreams. More importantly, it had given Catherine insight into her own story. The adoption documentary project is officially greenlit, she'd told me 3 weeks after the Austin reunion. The network wants a full series exploring family reunification stories. Using your story as the pilot episode? Our story. Sarah agreed to participate, and the kids are excited about being on television. The racing world had embraced Catherine's project with surprising enthusiasm. Drivers who'd initially been skeptical about cameras in their private space began opening up about their own family complications, their sacrifices, their dreams deferred and achieved. Catherine had this gift for making people feel safe enough to share their deepest truths. The green flag dropped, snapping me back to the present. 26 cars roared into turn 1, fighting for position in what would determine the state championship. I'd been leading the point standings all season, but motorsports have a way of humbling even the most prepared competitors. Through the first 10 laps, I held third position, waiting for the aggressive drivers ahead to make mistakes. Racing is as much about patience as speed, especially when championships are on the line. Catherine had taught me that during her months following the circuit, observing how the best drivers managed pressure. Patience in pursuit of goals, she'd said, something we both needed to learn. The comparison wasn't lost on me. Just as Catherine had spent years methodically searching for Sarah, I'd spent seasons building toward this moment. Every practice session, every setback, every small victory had been preparation for today. On lap 35, my opportunity came. The leader pushed too hard into turn 3, sliding up the track and creating an opening on the inside line. I dove low, pulling alongside as we hit the backstretch. The crowd's roar was audible even through my helmet as we crossed the finish line side by side. Victory lane was chaos, but the good kind. Champagne sprayed everywhere while photographers captured the moment from every angle. Through it all, I kept looking for Catherine in the crowd, needing to share this triumph with the person who'd become my anchor. She found me as the official celebrations wound down, slipping through the barriers with her camera still rolling. "How does it feel to be the Texas State Champion?" she asked. Microphone extended but eyes sparkling with personal pride. Like the beginning of something bigger. Care to elaborate for our viewers? I looked directly into her camera, but I was really talking to her. Sometimes you spend so long chasing one dream that you forget to notice the other dreams coming true around you. Today isn't just about winning a championship. It's about having people who matter there to witness it. Catherine lowered the camera, stepping closer. "Is that your victory speech?" "Part of it." The celebration dinner at Sarah and David's house felt like a homecoming. Emma wore my championship cap, while Michael peppered me with questions about racing strategy. Sarah had prepared a feast that could have fed the entire pit crew, and David kept proposing toasts to family victories. Speech! Speech! Michael demanded as we gathered around the dining room table. I stood, suddenly nervous in a way that racing never made me. 6 months ago, I thought winning races was the only thing that mattered. Then Catherine showed me that some victories are bigger than trophies. Like finding Aunt Katie, Emma added seriously. Exactly like finding Aunt Katie. And learning that family isn't just who you're born with, but who chooses to stay with you through the important moments. Catherine's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Sarah reached across the table to squeeze her hand, a gesture that had become automatic over the past months. To new beginnings, David raised his glass. To family, Sarah added. To second chances, Catherine whispered. Later, Catherine and I walked through Sarah's neighborhood under a sky full of Texas stars. The streets were quiet except for the distant sound of children playing and the comfortable hum of suburban evening routines. I have news, Catherine said, slipping her hand into mine. Good news or complicated news? Both. The adoption documentary series got picked up by a major streaming platform. Full season order, significant budget increase. That's incredible. Why is it complicated? Because they want me to relocate to Los Angeles for production. Better access to resources, industry connections, all the practical necessities. My steps slowed. For how long? 18 months minimum, maybe longer if the series succeeds. We stopped walking, standing beneath a streetlight that cast everything in golden circles. Catherine's face was carefully neutral, the professional mask she wore when delivering difficult news. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking that 18 months ago, this would have been an easy decision. Career advancement, financial security, professional recognition, everything I thought I wanted. And now? Now I have you. I have Sarah and the kids. I have roots that I spent 30 years trying to grow. The weight of the decision hung between us like a challenge. Catherine had worked her entire career toward opportunities like this, but accepting meant potentially sacrificing the relationships she'd just reclaimed. What do you want to do? I want to find a way to have both, the career success and the family connections, but I'm not sure that's realistic. I pulled her closer, wrapping my arms around her waist. What if we made it realistic? What do you mean? I mean, my racing career isn't tied to any specific location. NASCAR runs circuits all over the country, including California races. What if we made this adventure together? Catherine's eyes widened. You'd move to Los Angeles? Leave Texas? I'd follow you to Mars if it meant not losing what we've built. She kissed me then, desperate and grateful, tasting like champagne and possibility. When we broke apart, both our hearts were racing. Are you serious? Dead serious. Besides, Sarah and the kids will need regular visits from their favorite aunt. Someone has to make sure you don't disappear into your work completely. I love you, Nora Wilson. I love you too, Catherine Roberts. Championship trophy and all. We made love that night with the intensity of people celebrating multiple victories at once. Career achievements, family reunions, and relationship milestones all tangled together in the heat of bodies and hearts perfectly synchronized. Catherine whispered my name like a prayer as I mapped every inch of her skin with reverent touches. We moved together with the rhythm of dancers who'd finally learned each other's steps, building toward peaks that left us gasping and grateful in the Texas darkness. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets that smelled like her perfume and our shared satisfaction, Catherine traced lazy patterns across my shoulder blade. 18 months in Los Angeles, she mused. 18 months of new adventures. Different tracks to race, different stories for you to tell. Different dreams to chase together. The best kind. Through Sarah's guest room window, I could see the tire swaying gently in the night breeze. Tomorrow would bring logistics and planning, discussions about coast-to-coast moves and career transitions. But tonight, Catherine Roberts had everything she'd spent her adult life searching for: family, love, and professional success within reach. The championship trophy sat on the dresser, catching moonlight like a promise. Some victories you win alone, but the ones that matter most happen when you have people worth sharing them with. 18 months later, The Pearl District's historic buildings gleamed under San Antonio's sunset as guests gathered for the premiere of Finding Home, Stories of Reunion. Catherine stood beside me on the red carpet, radiant in a dress that made every photographer forget about the celebrities surrounding us. Nervous? I asked, adjusting the cufflinks she'd given me that morning. Terrified you? Same. But the good kind of terrified. The documentary series had exceeded everyone's expectations. Critics praised Catherine's sensitive handling of complex family dynamics, and streaming numbers suggested audiences were hungry for authentic stories about love, loss, and second chances. Tonight's premiere episode featured our story, Sarah's reunion, and the family we'd built together. Inside the theater, Sarah sat with David and the kids in the front row, Emma clutching a bag of popcorn like it was treasure. Over the past year and a half, we'd become the kind of blended family that defied traditional definitions. Sunday dinners in Austin, Christmas mornings that required 2 rental cars for all the presents, and birthday parties that spanned generations. The documentary began with footage of my broken-down Camaro on that blazing Texas highway, the moment that had changed everything. Watching our story unfold on screen was surreal. Intimate moments transformed into universal truths about taking chances on love. There, Catherine whispered as the camera captured our first kiss outside the diner. That's when I knew you were going to complicate my entire carefully planned life. Best complication ever? The only one that mattered. The audience laughed and cried in all the right places, but I kept watching Catherine's face in the theater's dim light. She'd taken stranger stories and woven them into something that felt like hope, proof that damaged things could be repaired and lost people could be found. During the scene showing Sarah opening her front door for the first time in 30 years, Catherine reached for my hand. Our fingers interlaced automatically, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. The credits rolled to thunderous applause. Catherine stood to acknowledge the audience, but I remained seated, reaching into my jacket pocket for the small velvet box I'd been carrying for 3 weeks. Catherine Roberts. She turned, probably expecting another congratulations or interview request. Instead, she found me on one knee beside her theater seat, holding a ring that had been custom designed with 2 intertwined bands, like racing stripes that had found their perfect partner. The theater fell silent, except for Emma's excited gasp from the front row. You've spent your career telling other people's stories, I said, my voice carrying in the sudden hush. Will you let me be part of yours for the rest of our lives? Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Nora! I know we've already built something incredible together, but I want it official. I want to marry you in front of everyone who matters, promise to chase dreams and face fears together, and maybe add a few more names to our Christmas card list. Yes. The word came out as a whisper, then louder. Yes, absolutely yes. The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, and the theater exploded in celebration. Sarah was crying, David was cheering, and Michael was asking loudly why grown-ups were being so emotional about jewelry. Catherine pulled me up for a kiss that tasted like victory and forever, surrounded by applause from strangers, who just watched our love story unfold on screen. This is happening in front of 300 people, she whispered against my lips. Perfect audience for a perfect moment. The after-party at Sarah and David's house felt like the kind of family gathering Norman Rockwell would have painted if he'd been more progressive. Catherine's documentary colleagues mixed with my racing crew. Sarah's neighbors brought casseroles, and Emma appointed herself official wedding planner despite being 9 years old. We need flowers, Emma announced, pulling out a notebook she'd decorated with stickers, and a big cake, and pretty dresses, and someone to take pictures. I'll handle the pictures, Catherine said, tweaking Emma's nose. Professional perk. Can Uncle David walk you down the aisle? Michael asked, since you don't have a dad? The question hit deeper than he intended. Catherine's eyes filled with the kind of tears that come from being understood by someone who shouldn't be old enough for such insight. I'd be honored, David said quietly. And Sarah can be my maid of honor, Catherine added. What about me? Emma demanded. Flower girl, I said immediately. Most important job at the wedding. As the evening wound down, Catherine and I found ourselves on Sarah's back porch, the same spot where we'd first talked about moving to Los Angeles together. The tire swing still hung from the oak tree, but now it was surrounded by Emma's chalk art and Michael's baseball equipment. "So," Catherine said, snuggling closer on the porch swing, "when do you want to do this? Tomorrow? Next week? I'm flexible on timing, non-negotiable on the outcome. How about next spring? Give Emma enough time to plan the wedding of the century." "Perfect. That gives me time to win another championship to impress my future in-laws." Catherine laughed, the sound mixing with distant traffic and suburban evening sounds. "You've already impressed them. Sarah told me yesterday that you're the best thing that's happened to our family since Emmy learned to use the toilet by herself." High praise. The highest. 6 months later, we were married in Sarah's backyard under an arch of white roses and racing flags. Emma scattered petals with theatrical flair, while Michael carried rings tied to a miniature race car. Sarah cried through her maid of honor speech, and David's toast made even the toughest members of my pit crew reach for tissues. But the moment that mattered most came after all the guests had gone home, when Catherine and I slow danced to music from someone's phone while Sarah's family cleaned up around us. "Mrs. Wilson Roberts," Catherine whispered as we swayed beneath string lights and Texas stars. "I like the sound of that." "Good, because you're stuck with it now. Best kind of stuck there is." Looking back, I realized that everything important in my life started with mechanical failure or broken things that needed fixing. A busted radiator hose led to roadside assistance from a beautiful stranger. Catherine's broken childhood led to a career built on finding lost people. Sarah's fractured family history led to a reunion that changed all our definitions of home. Sometimes the best victories come not from crossing finish lines first, but from finding the people worth sharing the victory lap with. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those people become your family, your future, and your forever, all wrapped up in one perfect, complicated, beautiful package. The tire swing still hangs in Sarah's backyard, but now it holds 3 generations of laughter. Emma's chalk art has evolved into serious artistic aspirations. Michael's baseball equipment migrated to Little League championships, and Catherine's documentaries continue winning awards for stories that matter. As for me, I'm still racing, still winning, still chasing that perfect lap. But now I have a pit crew that extends far beyond the track, a family that spans adoption and choice and chance encounters on broken highways. And somewhere in our home office hangs a brass key to an empty storage unit, reminder of secrets that became bridges and searches that became homecomings. Some stories end with checkered flags. The best ones end with promises that last a lifetime.